Welcome to the Touch MBA Admissions Podcast. Do you need help figuring out which schools to apply to or how to get into the world's top MBA programs? Hey, you're not alone. Join thousands of others on this podcast and on our site, touchmba.com, as they seek the admissions edge. And now, here's your host, Darren Joe.
Hey, what's up, Touch MBA fam? Welcome to the podcast. For those of you listening in for the first time, what we do here is bring on admissions directors, students, and alumni from the world's top-ranked business schools to give you an inside look on what these programs are really like, what they value, and of course, how you can give yourself the best chance of getting in. Many of you are interested in an MBA because you want to start a business someday. You're interested in entrepreneurship. But how useful is an MBA really to help you do this? So what I did in this episode is I invited two recent Wharton graduates to come on the show and discuss their experience, to discuss whether an MBA really helps you become a better entrepreneur. I brought on Alex Kubo and Renata Arauz DeStefano. Alex is currently VP of Growth at Burrow.com, which is a Y Combinator-backed startup that two of his classmates founded in between their first and second years at Wharton. And Renata started a fashion social enterprise that brings customized African apparel to U.S. women consumers. I think what you'll really get from this episode is how these two applicants position themselves for an MBA, what they did during their MBAs to really take advantage of all the resources that Wharton had to offer to start their organizations, what they learned from that process, and really how their entrepreneurship journey never stops. What I took away from this episode is that network is a multiplier. So much of the value of an MBA is in the network, but you need to bring your own skill set, your own context, your own tenacity, your own grit to really make the most of that incredible network. The more you give, the more you get. That's what I took away. But I also want to give a hat tip to our sponsor, Common Bond, for introducing me to these two students. You ever wish there was an easier, more affordable way to get MBA loans? Well, now there is. Common Bond is a leading student lender saving members up to $13,000 on MBA loans. Learn more at commonbond.co/touchmba. Common Bond Lending, LLC, NMLS number 1175900. So yes, thank you, Common Bond, for the introduction. Both these students used Common Bond during their MBA. I also wanted to let you guys know of some of our free school selection services that might be helpful to you. The first is, we offer you free school selection help at touchmba.com. So you would just head over to our site, upload your profile, upload your career goals, let us know, which schools you're thinking about. And we'd be happy to give you some free advice on how you can improve your profile, which top MBA programs fit your goals and your background. We'd also assess your competitiveness at your target schools. And if you want, you can opt in to share your profile with 13 top business schools around the world to get an early indication of fit before you apply. We've also been working really hard on our ambassadors forum. Many applicants know someone who has gone to these top schools, whether that's a friend or a colleague or a family member, but there are also a number of you applicants I know that don't have this network. So this is our attempt to bridge that gap. So what we've done is we've gotten over 30 students from 30 top business schools, all former listeners of the Touch MBA podcast, to share their experience and answer your questions. And if they can't answer your questions, they can refer you to the right place to look or maybe another classmate. So this is our way of really trying to tie you into actual students and to get student insights. They are truly the experts of the experience. They can really help you make that decision. So go check that out at ambassadors.touchmba.com. And now let's get to my conversation with Alex. So it's my pleasure to introduce Alex Kubo, who recently, about a month ago, just graduated from Wharton and got his MBA. Alex, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Darren. It's a pleasure to be here.
Could you just take us back before you attended Wharton? What were you doing and why did you want to go to business school at that time?
Yeah, absolutely. So I got my undergraduate degree from Lehigh University. It's a mechanical engineering degree, and then went on to work for ExxonMobil for 5 years in the oil and gas industry. During my time there, I most recently led offshore and subsea execution projects for the production company within Exxon in West Africa. And it got to a point where I realized I didn't really jive too well with the oil industry. I didn't feel comfortable in it. And even though I was kind of building a really solid career and the compensation was great, I realized I wanted to be more consumer facing. I wanted to be more early stage. And so when I looked at my network and saw that it was very heavily entrenched in the oil industry, I realized that an MBA would be a really good option for me to kind of recenter myself, build a new network that was more applicable to the industry and stage that I wanted to get into. And so about 5 years into my career, I started looking into the MBA and eventually settled on Wharton as my top choice.
Got it. And so when you were thinking of moving into a more customer-facing role, being an engineer and having worked for ExxonMobil, were you explicitly thinking about entrepreneurship or startups as a goal? Or did that kind of evolve as you started your MBA?
I think I've always been interested in entrepreneurship. My mom likes to joke that whenever I took swim lessons when I was a kid, I would go underwater every time the swim instructor started talking because I never liked taking orders from anybody else. And so that kind of like gives a hint as to why working in a massive corporation like Exxon just wasn't really right for me. Yep. And so I felt like either starting my own company or joining a very, very early stage company and learning from my peers was a really good option for me.
As a very analytical person, which I'm sure you are, what was your thinking in terms of the return on your time and obviously the money invested in a top-ranked MBA in relation to your goals?
Yeah, 100%. So I guess when I looked at, again, the network that I had built, I looked at the experience that I had. Everything was large corporation. It was very heavily entrenched in all the red tape. And it was in an industry that I wasn't terribly excited about. And so when I had to come to terms with the fact that an MBA is 2 years of lost income, it's $200,000 investment roughly when you factor everything in. It's a big investment, and you have to make sure that it's right for you. And for me, what that came down to was looking at the career that I had built to that point and looking where I wanted to be 5 to 10 years down the road and realizing that there was a huge disconnect that I had to fill in some way. And when I thought about the options of trying to claw my way into the consumer industry, claw my way into a different stage, claw my way into a different type of role, because I was in engineering, I wanted to get more into more like a rounded product role, including like product marketing. Making all of those leaps was going to be incredibly difficult for me if I didn't have kind of the supporting environment of an MBA and have the time at the MBA in order to really evaluate whether this change was right for me, and if it was, to go gung-ho towards it. If it wasn't, to reestablish my network and move in a different direction.
Can you remember what your post-MBA goals were in your application?
Yeah, actually, it's funny because they're pretty much in line with what I'm doing now. What I said was, I was a bit vague in terms of what industry I wanted to be in. I wasn't really sure the vertical that was right for me. What I knew was that I wanted to make people excited about products. And that was something that I really came to terms with when I was talking to family and friends about what I did before my MBA. And nobody gets excited to go to the gas station. Granted, it is incredibly, incredibly important for the world. It fuels every industry, quite literally. And it's indispensable at this point in time. And so the relevance of the oil industry is great to talk about. But at the end of the day, you can't get your friends excited about the latest revision of 89 octane gas at the pump, right?
Yeah.
And so when I was defining kind of my post-MBA goals, I said, essentially, I wanted to get into an early stage company to really test the grit and tenacity that I thought I had.
Mm-hmm.
and get more consumer facing in a hardware startup as well, which is a little bit different than kind of the trend that's been going on the past 10 years, which is everyone going tech, going software, because it scales easily. There's very little overhead, and it's easy. But that's kind of what's creating the divide in the country, I think, is that there's so much environment for fostering these tech startups, and it's kind of leaving a lot of the old school manufacturing behind. And so that's something that Stephen and Kabir and I with Burrow are trying to reconnect. Is like, here's this hot new startup that was out of Y Combinator, now based in New York in the tech scene. But we're a furniture company, at the end of the day. Yeah. And we're trying to create jobs.
Maybe, could you just take us a step back? What is Burrow? What do you guys sell?
Yeah, absolutely. So Burrow is an e-commerce brand that delivers high-end furniture at a fraction of the price and with a superior buying experience. And it's all kind of started because of the MBA. When Stephen Kabir and I moved into Philadelphia, we each had our own struggle with buying a sofa, which I think everyone can kind of commiserate with, which is we really have two choices when you're broke. Either you go to IKEA and you buy a particle board piece of shit, for lack of a better term, that takes 3 hours and a trip to the ICU to assemble. And then 12 months down the road, you're inevitably moving again, trying to get it out of your apartment. It'll either break or you will break. And then our other option is to feed up the cash and go to like West Elm or Crate and Barrel or like a high-end retailer and get a really nice sofa, but pay $2,000 plus for it, and have to wait 8 to 12 weeks because none of these high-end retailers warehouse or stockpile finished goods. They're all made to order because they're so expensive to warehouse. And so we did a deeper dive, like, why is there such a gap? And it turns out it's all in logistics. When you look at a high-end sofa, shipping from the supplier to the manufacturer to the warehouse to the retailer to the consumer, you're adding on several $100s at every step because you have to use dedicated freight. And so that's why the retailer then, like Crate and Barrel, West Elm, makes the customer pay for that inefficiency. So the sofa that really originally cost about $350 to $400 to make, you're paying $2,000 for it. Whereas IKEA's taken like the complete opposite approach and tried to flat pack everything, make it as bare bones cheap as possible, so you can furnish your whole home really quickly. Well, you can buy it really quickly. Assembling it is not quick. But we decided to look into this more and try to figure out a way to modularize a high-end sofa, use all the same high-end materials of construction, the same level of craftsmanship, but be able to modularize it to ship it in standard freight. That's by like UPS or FedEx directly to your door, and also create a better assembly experience than IKEA. And so what we've been able to do after a very deep dive in engineering is to create a modularized version of a high-end sofa that ships to you in compact boxes in less than a week. It assembles actually in less than 10 minutes with absolutely no tools, and it breaks down just as easily. And again, it uses all the same high-end materials of construction. So anyway, Steve and Kabir were in Y Combinator last summer with the company. I joined them following my involvement in 2 other companies, as well as an internship at a startup in New York called Andela, right in August when they were coming out of Y Combinator. And since that time, we've kind of built it up, and we had a full public launch about 2 months ago on April 4th.
That's fantastic. I mean, if I was living in the U.S., I would love to see or try your product, but I'm in Vietnam. So maybe when you guys figure out the international logistics part, but that sounds like a really interesting concept. Let's move back into your Wharton days. There's a couple ways, like I think a lot of applicants are thinking, they're interested in doing something like you're doing now. And they're thinking, okay, I can look at the classes, right? Curriculum. I can look at extracurriculars. And I know you were involved in the entrepreneurship club at Wharton. And I know you majored in entrepreneurship management, right? At Wharton too. And they're looking at the network, right? Obviously. And perhaps career services. So let's first talk about the curriculum, I guess. How much did you get from taking the entrepreneurship classes and majoring in entrepreneurship management at Wharton?
Yeah, so I think one of the best things about Wharton is that all of the classes are kind of focused on this ideal of content with context. And that is to say that you get a lot of like tools and practices and whatnot, which is the content, but it's about being able to apply those to real life scenarios. And that is the context part of it. And so in looking at the entrepreneurial management major in particular, all of the courses are geared around your company. Like some of them, a prerequisite is that you have to have a company that you're working on and that your deliverables are actual deliverables for your company. It's incorporation, it's marketing plans, it's financial models, it's, pitching to VCs. A lot of the courses actually they culminate in a pitch to local and regional venture capitalists, which is a great kind of safe environment, number one, to practice your pitch and to get really solid feedback to build, to integrate into your company plan.
Yeah.
And then also to build connections for when you're ready to raise. And some people are ready to raise at that point, and they go on and have additional conversations with VCs and end up raising. And, some people end up dropping out after their first year. In fact, Stephen and Kabir and I were all in the same class. Our spring semester of our first year, where our professor in one of our entrepreneurship courses said on the first day, my goal is for all of you to drop out in May.
I'm sure the administration's really happy with that.
It's funny because Wharton has a really interesting characteristic where you can take a 5-year leave of absence between your 2 years. And that's one of the tools that they use to encourage student entrepreneurs and attract them.
I never knew that. That's
interesting. Yeah. So if you make a lot of headway your first year and you want to see where it goes your summer and you're on a really strong path, why should the MBA hold you back? We're all there to accomplish a goal. And if that happens earlier than we planned, then so be it. Right.
Yeah. I mean, I believe the founder of Common Bond is a Wharton dropout. So, but I think he might be in his 4th or 5th year, so he might be nearing the end of the time, right?
That's right.
Okay, so that's really interesting. I never knew that. And so did that curriculum and those pitches end up leading you to Andela, which I believe was your summer internship, right?
Yes. So I don't know if it was the curriculum that led me to that, but it was the career services and it was the network.
Yeah.
I knew I wanted to be an early stage company, as we discussed before, and my kind of 10-year goal is to be chief product officer, essentially, at a very fast-growing Series B, Series C hardware startup. And so I needed to round out the product and engineering experience with more marketing experience. And so I kind of scoured the scene for a Series A type startup in New York where I wanted to end up after school.
Yep.
And one that would give me very hands-on, very detailed and very high-level marketing experience. And so I kind of scoured the job listing, some searching within my own network, and was able to get an interview with Andela, and was fortunate enough to be selected for the position. And then actually my first day, I asked my boss, who is Evan, who's the director of marketing, I'd love to know why you chose me. And he said, what it came down to was that when we look at MBAs, traditionally, a lot of startups have this sentiment that MBAs are useless.
Yeah.
And I think that's because traditionally MBAs have come in and, said, I want to run the show. And I think that's just a general misconception about what MBAs are like today. And he said, of all of the people that we interviewed from Harvard, Stanford, MIT, whatever, you were the most down to earth and willing to get into the details. And I think that's something that people really need to focus on is if you really want to get into the startup world, you have to be willing to pick up the scraps. You have to be willing to take out the trash every day. And that's tough. I mean, For me, coming from a very comfortable career, earning a lot of money in the oil industry, to go to earning next to nothing, but gaining an incredible experience. It's testing, it's trying, but it is the ultimate insight into whether this career path is right for you and whether you should actually risk, yourself and your career to pursue it.
No, that's like great advice. And I noticed you continued on with Andela. Actually, let's take a step back. Could you let us know what Andela does? Just really quickly.
Yes, absolutely. So Andela is a startup based in New York. Their corporate headquarters, I should say, is in New York. And then they have campuses throughout Africa, starting with Nairobi in Kenya and Lagos in Nigeria. What they do is they recruit the top software developers in Africa and refine their skills and abilities to turn them into technical leaders. And one of the ways they do that is they pair them with fast-growing companies in the U.S. to essentially be distributed resources. And so companies in the U.S. right now, where there's 5 software job listings for every software engineer, get access to elite technical talent. I mean, these guys are brilliant, and women are brilliant.
Yeah.
And then the African developers get an opportunity to really refine their skills and abilities so that when they get out of the Andela program, which lasts for 4 years, the goal is for those technical leaders to then form kind of the next wave of entrepreneurship within Africa and create and a more robust kind of economic development for the continent.
Gosh, that's like super. I mean, there's so much I would like to ask you about that in itself.
Yeah.
But I know our time is limited. So you continued working with Andela your second year, right? And I also noticed you started working for Burrow your second year as well in the fall.
That's right.
So how were you able to do both these things while going through Wharton?
It's actually, I was also working on a medical device startup at the same time. And that kind of came out of a competition at the UPenn, within the UPenn community, outside of the Wharton community. And so between the medical device startup, my continuation as a consultant for Andela, and joining Burrow full time, and obviously trying to graduate, it came down to a lot. But honestly, I think that kind of 4 to 6 month period was crucial for me to really figure out what was it that made me excited. Because ultimately, I couldn't support all of these things, right?
Yeah.
And so I knew I wanted to finish my MBA. Did not want to take advantage of the leave of absence to just get it home. And so then I could fully focus on the company. And then when I looked at what do I love about what I get up and do every day, I love the immediacy of the consumer startup, and I love the hardware aspect of it. So Andela was amazing. The people there are incredible. The mission is unbelievable, and it's under phenomenal leadership. And it's a really exciting entity to be a part of. But at the end of the day, I wanted to be in the B2C environment rather than the B2B environment. And Andela is obviously a B2B company. And then with the medical device, it was just going to take a long time. It's still going right now. Thankfully, we were able to raise or win $100,000 from Harvard's Mass Gen Hospital for it. And so the team is continuing to work on that. But ultimately, I had to make a decision. There's only so many hours in the day. What do I have enough time to dedicate to? And what it came down to me was finish my MBA and run full speed with Burrow. And so I ended up pulling myself off the medical project.
And it never crossed your mind while your classmates, the vast majority of your classmates are being recruited by top consulting and top finance and top, even can say consumer good companies, making a ton of money or making good salaries. Like it never crossed your mind to go to some of those recruiting sessions or explore those options? Because I would think if I was in your shoes, I would have a tough time, despite clearly your passion for what you're doing in these various projects. Like, oh man, I'm in debt. Like Burrow, this sounds really interesting, but man, jobs, traditional MBA jobs, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It is incredibly, incredibly stressful, particularly when people are getting job offers in the January timeframe of our first year for internships and stuff. And then, that's pretty early in your MBA career, and you're probably still figuring out whether your company is going to go anywhere at all. Right. And so that time is incredibly, incredibly stressful. And it is hard. But again, what it comes down to is grit and tenacity. And if you feel like you should be going to these interviews and information sessions, then entrepreneurship probably is not the right path for you. And I'll be honest, I mean, at that time, I was still wavering a little bit. In fact, I went to a coffee chat with a software company, and within the first 5 minutes, I realized, what am I doing? I've got to get out of here. And so I said, thank you so much for taking the time with me. Career Services is going to kill me if they hear this. But I really don't think this is right. And instead of wasting your time, I'm just going to go.
Yeah.
And right after that, I realized, you know what, I just need to stick to my guns, go for what I said I'm going to go for, and do it.
And your involvement, I just want to touch on one more aspect of the Wharton education. Your involvement in the entrepreneurship club. Yeah. Like, I'm wondering, how much you got out of that, if you found that very helpful in your journey. Yeah,
I think so. And I would say that, like, from a leadership perspective, it helped me a lot because it helped me to understand what the entrepreneurial community at Wharton was interested in, what they were doing, what people were working on, and their networks that we could kind of take advantage of and also help build. And so I led the careers department, which in the first year was basically just leading a trek to New York City. It was a one-day thing, but we were able to meet with 21 different startups across a variety of different verticals. And we met with the founding teams, and we got to hear firsthand, what was it like going through all this. Some of them were within the Wharton network. Other ones are just really interested in having a bunch of smart MBAs come and basically consult with them for a half an hour about their problems.
Right.
And so I tailored that into kind of leading the careers department my second year, which came down to trying to understand what people really wanted to do, trying to build the network for the club to create those opportunities for them. And it also really helped me build my network within the New York entrepreneurship scene, which is incredibly strong and continuing to grow and entirely interlinked. I mean, people kind of hop between all the startups here. Like, if you go to any one of them, you'll find somebody that you know from a prior startup, which is great.
Yeah, I would think like that's a great point of contact to be, running the careers. For the entrepreneurship club or for any club, right? And then that puts you in touch with a lot of people in industry. I'd like to take 2 steps back this time and talk more philosophically, or I don't know philosophically, but just through your experience. Like, what advice would you give to applicants who were once like you, thinking of attending a top-ranked MBA to start a company? Or, to be an entrepreneur? Like, what would your advice to them be?
I think my advice, honestly, is to hit the ground running, run as fast as you possibly can, talk to as many people as you possibly can, and do not fall into the trap of holding your idea too close to your chest. I think that a lot of people, because of the world outside of the MBA community, is threatening. People can steal ideas. There might be a better founding team out there that can take your idea and run with it. And as one of my peers told me very early on, if somebody else out there can do this better than you, then you're not the right person to run it. And I think that's something that you need to find out very quickly. And it's kind of an age-old saying with entrepreneurship that you need to fail fast.
Yeah,
I think that's incredibly true. And that's why it's so important to talk to as many people as you can about your idea. Once you're within the MBA community, I can't speak for other programs, but I know within Wharton, it's incredibly safe and incredibly collaborative and encouraging. And when you have these conversations with people about your idea, you immediately get very intelligent feedback. You get connections to their network, and people all want to help each other. And I think like when people are generally considering an MBA in tandem with starting a business, you have to understand that it is 100% going to be challenging. It is not going to be easy, but if it was easy, then more people would be doing it, right? But I guess a couple things. Essentially, it's a 2-year incubator where you're surrounded by brilliant minds and endless resources. And to my knowledge, you'll never have another opportunity in your life to be surrounded by so many people that are so intently focused on your success. And I think that with regard to the network that you build, you cannot place value enough value on the peers, the faculty, the alumni that you meet and build relationships with. And then from a more practical perspective, I think I mean, the great thing about going back to school is that you qualify for loans, which can support you for 2 years, which kind of sounds financially risky. But at the end of the day, you've graduated from a top tier MBA program. So even if your startup fails, you have solid career prospects. And I think going back to Common Bond, I think they're unique in that they're more of a support system or education enabler, as I like to say, than a financier. I remember some of my most draining periods in my MBA, Common Bond would show up and take a group of us out to a nice dinner, which was always super relaxing.
Yeah.
And so I guess tying this all together, it's really about planning out the 2 years, making sure that the resources and network of that school are aligned with your ambitions, and then planning this out as best you can to take advantage of as many resources to be able to have as many conversations as you possibly can with as many people as you possibly can. Just take advantage of it, run as hard as you can, as fast as you can. I would not say put horse blinders on and say, this is the only thing I'm going to do and this is what I'm going to be doing after graduation, because there's a lot of phenomenal ideas, just like Burrow, that happened organically in the MBA environment, that none of us came in thinking we're going to build couches when we get out of school. But we found an opportunity through one of the foundational entrepreneurship courses. We were able to connect with our networks and connect with the faculty and do a lot of market research and realize there was a lot of potential behind it. And then bring it to fruition, go through Y Combinator, get out of Y Combinator, raise a bunch of money, and then launch, all while we were in school. And I think that's testament to each of us kind of focusing on what are the resources that we're going to use while we're in school, and being able to plan our curriculum and our extracurriculars around that goal.
I mean, I think that's just so amazing that your classmates, Stephen and Kubir, right, are their names, you're saying?
Yes.
Were able to go through their first year at Wharton and apply and get accepted to Y Combinator, right?
Yep.
Is that, I'm understanding this correctly? And then come back. Because I think a lot of people from the outside looking in would say you got to choose one or the other, right?
Right.
You go for the big time MBA, or, you go to these super competitive programs like Y Combinator, Techstars, et cetera. And so that's very interesting. They're able to do both. And
I think that is that's testament to the Wharton environment, because a lot of VCs, as you correctly pointed out, will be very hesitant to invest if your founders are in school and they're dedicated to staying in school.
Yeah.
What our investors understood the value of Wharton's program in particular, which is incredible strength. We have this reputation for being the finance school, and I think deservedly so. Our finance program is second to none. But people often don't acknowledge how strong our marketing department is and our operations department. And marketing and operations are the two pillars of any solid e-commerce company. And so they saw the opportunity to go back to school and be able to continually tap into the faculty and the coursework there as really an investment and asset to the company. And so it wasn't terribly difficult for us to convince our investors in particular that going back to school was not going to hinder the progress of Burrow. And I think kind of in hindsight, it's proved out to be true.
Yeah. I mean, I would be curious to know how many MBAs Y Combinator has accepted. That would be an interesting stat.
I don't know. Yeah.
Well, and just a few more questions.
Sure.
Are there any cons to getting an MBA? Looking back, I know you're just recently graduated, but
yeah, I think for me, I honestly can't say that there are, just because I set a goal when I came in here and I blew past that goal before I got out. And so that it's tough for me to say, the MBA was not right for me. Look, it was incredibly difficult on my family. For instance, I got married the June before I started Wharton in August. And then my wife couldn't find a job in Philadelphia, and so she ended up working in Connecticut. And so for 2 years, right after we got married, she was taking the train down every weekend. We were not together at all during the week. And it was incredibly stressful. I mean, it put a lot of stress on her. It was obviously more difficult for her because I'm surrounded by brilliant people every day, and it's super exciting to be a part of.
Yeah.
but she's, up in Connecticut having to live with her parents because we can't afford to pay for 2 apartments. And so again, like, it all comes down to the financial and time investment in deciding whether that's right for you or not.
Yeah.
I would say that in general, if people are enjoying their career and they don't need an MBA to get ahead, then don't do it.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important decision to make, is that you have to like really evaluate your network. If you can do it without the MBA, do it without the MBA, but understand the value is far beyond the classroom when you get here. And I think too many people, even still today, look at the academics as the main asset of the MBA program, and it's really not. I would say probably 70-75% of the value of the MBA is the network and the relationships that you build, followed by the academics and the resources that the MBA program provides.
Yeah, that's awesome. And my last question is, just to advise applicants like who are like you, what would you encourage them to look for? You mentioned like resources and a network that could help them accomplish their goals, right? But for many applicants, they're just looking at US News rankings or, Harvard. That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Like how can they go a little deeper as someone who has just completed this journey? Like, do you have any like inside tips? Like what could they look for example? Is it just classes or clubs? What else?
I think one thing that is absolutely imperative before you do any of the applications is to go and visit the school while it is in session. Sit in the classes, go to some of the extracurricular things. I think most programs, I can speak for Wharton, I can't speak for others, but I would imagine that most of the top tier programs really cater to prospective students and they bring them into the community as if they were part of our own.
Yeah.
And so, for instance, like our prospects will come, they'll have access to 3 or 4 classes a day and a variety of different academic verticals. And then we'll invite them to our MBA pub, which is a regularly occurring thing on Thursdays where we all take over the Philadelphia Armory and you just drink and relax with friends. It's a student-run thing. And I think that it really gives insight to what is the environment that you're going to be entrenched in once you're here. Because you cannot evaluate that until you're here. And even visiting, it's difficult to really understand it, but at least gives you some credible insight into what the environment is like.
Yeah. No, that's great. Let's end it there. Thank you so much, Alex. I wish you the best of luck with Burrow, and I'll definitely be checking up on you and the company in the months and years to come.
100%. And one last thing, I'd be remiss if I didn't toss out some Common Bond and Burrow love. So if any of your listeners want to use the code Burrow, CB17, all caps, for $50 off at Burrow, we'd love to throw that out for.
Whoa, wait, say that one more time. How does that work?
You can just go to burrow.com and use the code, all caps, Burrow, BURROW, followed by CB for Common Bond, and then followed by 17.
Got it.
And that'll be $50 off at burrow.com.
There you go, folks. Give it a shot with this MBA. All right, Alex. Thanks a lot. Really appreciate your time.
Absolutely, Darren. Thanks so much.
Save up to $13,000 with a low-interest MBA loan from Common Bond. Common Bond has funded over $1 billion in student loans, and their easy online application only takes minutes. To learn more, visit commonbond.co/touchmba. Common Bond Lending, LLC, NMLS number 1175900. It's my pleasure to introduce our next guest on the show. She just recently graduated from Wharton, and she's in Malawi. I have a lot of trouble saying that country name. Malawi, right? Malawi. So calling from Malawi, you're our first guest ever. I'd like to introduce Renata Arauz DeStefano. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here, Darren.
Thanks for calling in all the way from Africa. Appreciate it. So, Renata, we wanted to do an episode focused on, entrepreneurship and MBAs. And a big part of that for many of our listeners is they would like to get involved in a social enterprise or be involved in social entrepreneurship. So I'd really love to learn more about your journey. Could we first just take a step back and could you let us know what you were doing before Wharton and why you decided to get your MBA there?
Definitely. So I have a non-traditional background by MBA standards. My undergrad degree was in international relations and French. And from there, I knew I wanted to work in financial inclusion or economic development. So I spent 4 years in microfinance, first in the Latin America and Caribbean region, and then most recently here in Malawi. That's what actually brought me here for the first time. Yes. And I really enjoyed my experience. I really enjoyed the idea of empowering people, especially women, through economic inclusion. But I also looked around me and saw that everyone in the C-suite had an MBA. And that's when I started digging and doing some research. I knew for me that microfinance could be a career option. I wasn't 100% convinced. I wanted to use the MBA as a gateway to either progress in that career or to switch careers.
What was your career goal in your application, if you can remember it?
Sure. It was something pretty vague, but basically be an innovative leader in the financial inclusion space. So I didn't want to rule out microfinance. I didn't want to rule out impact investing, which is something that I got to explore while at Wharton. But I really knew that I wanted to have the finance specific industry, but I also wanted to have the social impact aspect.
Got it. And so how did you narrow down your schools to Wharton? Did you apply to a bunch of schools or?
So I applied to 5. I'm pretty risk averse, so I applied to schools across the spectrum, and I was accepted into 4. And from there, it was a combination of financial aid packages and prestige, of course. Everyone hates to say that, but it was something that I took into factored into the equation. And then also, given my liberal arts background, I really felt that the MBA would be worth my investment if I went to a school that had a very quantitative and finance focus. And that's what ultimately led me to Wharton.
Got it. And so, let's talk about your social enterprise that you started. Could you give us a little bit of background there?
Definitely. So my social enterprise is called Mwayi. It means opportunity in Chichewa, the language of Malawi. And it's an ethical fashion brand that brings customized, handmade African print apparel to the U.S. consumer via an e-commerce platform. And simultaneously, we're running an apprenticeship program here in Malawi where we partner with a local nonprofit and recruit at-risk women and train them to be tailors. And as we scale, the idea is to be sourcing our full-time employees from this apprenticeship program. So we view it as a mutually beneficial arrangement that led to the name Mwayi, which means, as I said, opportunity. So we're providing opportunity for these women to gain employable skills and enter the formal sector for the first time. And also for the U.S. consumer, our big differentiator is made to measure apparel. So in the U.S., you see startups coming out that focus on the menswear industry, custom suits, for example. But for the time being, it's pretty much an untapped market for the women's wear market. So we really want to bring women the opportunity to feel confident and comfortable in their bodies, in their clothes, no matter their size and no matter their shape.
When did you decide to start this social enterprise? Was it at the beginning of your first year at Wharton or later on?
It was actually much later. I didn't go to Wharton to pursue entrepreneurship like many people. It was something that was more of a gradual process. There were a couple key experiences during my first year and my summer after my first year. One would be taking what they call a FAP, a field application project. And with a FAP, what you do is you get to work as a consultant for a third party. You're in a team of 6 MBA students, and you work on whatever project that company has for you. From there, I got to participate in another Wharton program called WIDGIC, the Wharton Global Impact Consultants Club. And it's a club through which students travel abroad to do pro bono consulting services for social enterprises and nonprofits around the world. And that took me to Ghana. So these were 2 experiences, one during my spring semester and one during my summer right after my first year. They kind of started helping me put the pieces of the puzzle together. For me, social impact has been core to my professional career goals since I was in high school practically. So that was always a priority. working in microfinance and coming to business school, I saw the benefit of sustainable for-profit model. And then the third piece of the puzzle, is my love for African print apparel. When I came here, I got tons of dresses made, tailored to my measurements, and really fell in love with the prints. So through these experiences, I kind of was able to put all the pieces of the puzzle together and make Mwayi.
Wow. Yeah. So your summer internship, you actually pursued a more you worked for Bank of America, right?
Correct.
Got it. And I should also clarify that you will be starting with them in the fall, correct? You got a full-time offer?
Yes, I did. I'm starting in July, actually. So just around the corner.
Man, just around the corner. Okay. So you're Malawi taking care of business. What are you doing right now? What's your big goal for your limited time there?
We're aiming to have a launch party here in Blantyre on the last week of June. In the meantime, we're working on getting our business certificate here in Malawi for what they call an export processing zone, which would give us huge tax breaks for exporting cotton apparel to the U.S. Today, we were watching the painters paint our cabinets to get places to have all of our fabric stored. So there's the big picture things along with the day-to-day boring details that we have to take care of.
Yeah. And so you plan to continue with Mwayi while you're working for Bank of America?
Correct. So one of my other big goals while I'm here is to onboard an operations manager, potentially a COO. So that's something that is in the works.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, gosh, you have such an interesting story, right? Coming as an international relations major, working in microfinance, and then going to business school. And are you going to be doing investment banking for Bank of America? What are you going to be doing for them?
Correct. I'll be in investment banking in their energy and power group based in New York.
In New York. Did you find business school to be a big adjustment? Because I think there's quite a lot of listeners out there that we have that maybe have more of a non-traditional background like you did and are a bit concerned about going back to get their MBA. It's just something so completely different than what they've been doing. I mean, I know you worked in microfinance, so you had that experience, but it still is quite a jump, no?
So I definitely agree. That was something that was on my mind as I was going through the application process. On one side, I was worried about the social or cultural fit. And on the other side, I was worried about the quantitative focus of an MBA. So on the first issue, I would say that I was pleasantly surprised. I think a lot of people coming from the nonprofit or the development sector, you're a bit wary of MBAs. You think maybe Wolf of Wall Street stereotype. So I kind of felt nervous going into that, but I think I was pleasantly surprised to see that a lot of Wharton students, I should just say all. I was really surprised by the quality of their analysis and the way they think through problems and just really having this more holistic, socially oriented mindset that was much more prevalent than I had expected. And also, for the quantitative side, what I would suggest is to prepare as much as possible before you actually arrive. So something that I took advantage of through Coursera is Wharton has a core curriculum on Coursera. So I was able to be exposed to 2 Wharton classes prior to even arriving in Philadelphia. And I think that really strengthened my application, but also started to help me get in the mindset of what an MBA, what the workload was like, what the professors were like, what a class structure looked like. So I'd really encourage people who have a non-traditional background, especially if it's not quantitative, to take advantage of sites like Coursera.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And did you find that the courses you took at Wharton are really helping you with your startup?
So yes and no. I was a finance and management major. So for example, a lot of the finance classes at a higher level are talking about leveraged buyouts and M&A. So Mwayi isn't there yet, but there are classes that were extremely practical for the day-to-day. For example, there was a class with Professor Stu Friedman called Leading Effective Teams. And through that class, we got practical real-time experience by working with an organization in Philadelphia as like basically management consultants on how they could improve their team dynamics. And here in Malawi, when I have employees for the first time, I find myself referring to those course materials regularly. Another class that was particularly useful was social entrepreneurship. So, of course, it was exactly what I needed. And through that class, we were actually able to pitch our business ideas, and the class voted on which ones they wanted to work on for the final project. So I had a team of brilliant MBA students working on Mwayi for the whole spring semester. So being able to tap into that through a course structure, having, basically the free advice from the professor who's working as an advisor just for your company. You have a team working for you and helping inform your decisions and guide your thinking was really valuable.
And did you find that a lot of your classmates also had their passion projects, organizations they wanted to start, companies they wanted to start too? Or were you more of a rarity?
I was actually surprised when I first arrived at Wharton by the number of people that wanted to work on a startup. I think that it tends to be the big thing that people talk about nowadays on MBA campuses. At first, like I said, my first year, I wasn't part of that crowd. I wasn't in the entrepreneurship club. I wasn't involved in any of the resources that Wharton has to offer for entrepreneurs. So I don't think it's a rarity, at least at Wharton, but I think perhaps the social impact bend or the social impact focus is less common.
I'd like to also talk about, your journey to Bank of America, like coming from that non-traditional background. Was it very tough for you to line up interviews to land that first summer internship?
So the investment banking recruiting process is pretty rigorous and demanding, and I think everyone who goes through it would agree. I found that my background was interesting to people, and a lot of the recruiting process is all about networking and having conversations with people. The recruiting period starts just after midterms at Wharton, so that's like mid-October, the first semester, and you have interviews in January. So you have a couple months of just networking, and at that stage, it's all about the personal relationship building. So I don't think that your background can be a detriment at that stage. The part that's more technical and quantitative comes in January. And by that time, you've had time to prepare. You've taken some corporate finance classes or accounting or things of that nature. So I don't think that it was a detriment for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And then when were you able to secure your full-time offer?
In August. So at the end of the 10-week internship.
Oh, okay. And then they made you the offer, and then boom, you knew what you were doing. Correct. That's got to be really liberating.
Exactly.
That's got to be a great feeling.
Which then gave me the freedom to start working on Mwayi.
Yes. And I mean, it's interesting because to me, those paths seem very opposite. Like it sounds like you're working on two completely different things, but yet they are exactly what you kind of set out to do, right? Work in finance and work in inclusion. And you're doing these things in two separate ways. How do you feel about that? Do you feel like they're related?
I definitely do. And I think I look at it more from a personal growth perspective. I think that investment banking and entrepreneurship both have a lot to offer me as an individual. I don't think that I'm 100% ready for either role. I think both are stretch experiences, but I think that as a CEO, being able to really thoroughly understand our company's financials and potentially at a later stage, if we're buying another small fashion company or if we need to sell, I think having that investment banking exposure will be really critical. And at the same time, I think in investment banking, you're working with companies, you're working with CEOs. So I think I'm getting to see both sides of the equation and the relationship. Yeah. And at the same time, I think that for me personally, these are both fulfilling jobs. I know that I want to nail down the quantitative and technical skills that I didn't have prior to business school. And I also know that I want to challenge myself to grow as an entrepreneur, as a manager, and as someone who can be a leader in social impact and social entrepreneurship.
What advice would you give to applicants who truly want to have a social impact in their work, but are considering MBAs? Because it's a huge investment of your time and money. And, if you're in debt, you're probably going to want to get a really well-paying job coming out of school.
Sure. So I think the future of social impact is sustainability. And for me, that translates into something with profit making. I think that more and more you're finding innovative companies that are able to match what they call profits with purpose. In the US, for example, you have benefit corporations. And just recently, I believe this year, at least in Pennsylvania, benefit LLCs were formed. So these are legal structures for a company that allow you to put the social mission on equal standing as, the shareholders or the owners of the company. So I think the future of social impact is in entrepreneurship, is in a profit-making network or ecosystem. So I would think that an MBA just makes a lot of sense right now. The skills that you gain through an MBA are transferable to any industry. So whether your focus is renewable energy or hunger alleviation or what have you, I think an MBA is a good use of your time and money.
Yeah, no, that's great. And do you think that it's necessary to get an MBA to start something as you did?
I definitely wouldn't say it's necessary. We have a bunch of undergrads at Wharton who are phenomenal and are doing their own thing already. I would say that it's a personal decision. You have to look at yourself with a critical eye and look at your own skill set, look at your experience. For me personally, I think starting my own enterprise without an MBA would have been impossible. I just didn't have that exposure at all. I didn't have that way of thinking or even that vocabulary. But it really is a personal choice based on what your experience is and what you think you can bring to the table with or without the MBA.
No, I think that's great advice. And I guess, a few more questions. So what would you advise applicants to really consider when they're choosing between schools? Because I think so many applicants are just looking at rankings. And rankings are no doubt important. But, for someone to really get the most out of their experience, which it really sounds like you did at Wharton, what would you advise them?
I would say to talk to as many people within the different MBA programs as possible. This is something that I didn't do. And looking back, I think it would have been really valuable. I've done that as a student. So a current alum talking to prospective students. But when I was applying, I was living in Malawi. I didn't have anyone in my personal network of family and friends who had an MBA. So I felt pretty much on the outside of this whole MBA world. And I think I spoke to one person at Wharton before applying. And I don't think I spoke to any other students at other schools that I applied to. So I think that talking to the students and getting that firsthand perspective is really valuable. And you can also get a sense of what's going on the campus on a day-to-day basis. So for example, when I talk to students, I get to hear their interests, not students, but prospective students, and hearing their backgrounds or their interests or their long-term goals, I can automatically put them in touch with a friend of mine at Wharton who's doing what they want to do. And I think having that firsthand account of I was at A, you're at A, and I got to B, you want to get to B, and I'm going to tell you how I got from A to B.
Right. So how are these prospective students reaching you?
That's a great question. So through a variety of means, I think a lot of it is friends of friends, which is one of the big reasons I think that I couldn't tap into this network. I think other people are also being more proactive on the Wharton website. If you look for certain affinity clubs, you can find the names of club presidents or their email addresses. And then if you're reaching out to the club president and you say, this is my profile, I'd really love to talk to any of your members who have experience in XYZ. And then that president would forward the email to me. But I think the unfortunate reality is that most of it's word of mouth and connections. And that's why people like me who are in Malawi in a non-traditional sector, I think have trouble talking to people who have an MBA or who are in the MBA program.
Yeah, I mean, that was a bit of a selfish question because I'm trying to start like a forum where we get, ambassadors from the top 30 schools so that applicants can come and immediately reach out to someone, because I think most MBA applicants have that network, but there's definitely a lot, especially, if you're living in a developing country, for example, where you might not have those connections to tap. So that's something we're trying to address. But I agree with you like 100%. And I think we've kind of walked through your journey. I just, if there's any last advice or encouragement you could share with our audience, what would that be?
I would say to make a plan going into your MBA, but also make a plan to readjust as you go. I think part of the beauty of your MBA is that it's a learning process and you're going to be exposed to things that you didn't even know or anticipate that you could be exposed to. So to try to keep an open mind and know that there are multiple paths and it's okay to start one path and then slow down and maybe switch to another path, and just really take things as they come and take opportunities with an open mind.
That's great. And well, thank you so much. And how can we find out more? How can we buy your clothes?
So you can't buy our clothes just yet, but by the end of next month, you should be able to. So you can currently follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Mwayi, MYMWAYI. And you can register to stay tuned for our launch at www.mymwayi.com. Got
it. Thank you so much, Renata. It's been great having you on the show, and definitely follow your progress and see what you're up to. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And let me know when you launch that ambassador program. I definitely would like to sign up.
Thanks for listening to the Touch MBA podcast. Don't be shy. We have a mailing list. Go to touchmba.com and get yourself signed up. And we'll keep you posted with the best tips and insider interviews on how to get into your #1 school. You can also find us on Twitter and Facebook at Touch MBA. See you soon.